If I told you an ACC team has been accused of tampering in the football transfer portal, you would have a couple of guesses. Virginia would not be one of them.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. On this episode, we're going to talk with Isaac Shade of Locked On Tar Heels about North Carolina's transfer portal. Been some losses, been some gains. A very notable loss this week was their star linebacker, Amari Campbell, who hit the portal. So what's going on with Belichick, Lombardi, and the 33rd NFL team up there in Chapel Hill? I do want to talk some NFL draft because there is definitely one first-round stone-cold lock. I think the ACC is probably going to have 3 guys drafted in the first round. Could it be more? Should it be more? But Kenton Gibbs, by the way, he's Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. We saw it was late last week. Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, called out Virginia, Tony Elliott's UVA Cavaliers. He called them out for tampering with one of his safeties. Virginia ended up actually landing Colorado's leading rusher in the transfer portal. I mean, would UVA have been the team on your bingo card that would get called out for tampering in this portal season?
If you told me UVA got caught tampering, I'd say Odom already has an infraction? Oh, my God. People are already on his head? He's been on campus for like 2.5 days.
That's why I said
here?
football. I said football in the open. That's why.
Tony Elliott doing some tampering? I barely knew the guy recruited at all. I mean, I will say this, though. They are getting some pretty big gets from Colorado and all that good stuff. At the end of the day, it's like we talked about with tampering before. If you're complaining about it, your team's just probably not good at it. That's probably all that is. Because we've talked about this on the show before, but I mean, in all seriousness, what actually is tampering? What is it, right? I know there's been plenty of times where on Locked On Wolfpack, a guy got in the portal, and Grayson and I immediately were like, hey, Noah Rogers, come on back down south, man. It's too cold in Ohio. Also, it's Ohio. Who wants to be in the state of Ohio by choice? Come on back down to North Carolina. Because somebody say that we were tampering, or, Ken Gibbs is a former player, therefore it is tampering? Is it only if you're on the roster? Is it third parties? Are third parties okay to reach out and inquire? All of these types of things. And the NCAA can do its best to outline, hey, this is tampering. But again, what actually is it, and how fair is it to tell a young man, you can't tell your former teammate that he should come join you? Because there are multiple guys that played with a Noah Rogers in high school on NC State's roster, most notably backup quarterback Lex Thomas, who is of the Thomas bloodline. A lot of them play for NC State. So, again, it's a question of what actually is tampering, how is it being done, and if you're complaining about it, 9 times out of 10, your team just got somebody posting, you got to live with it.
So here's how this is unfolded between Colorado and Virginia. So last Thursday, after one of the final spring practices for the Buffaloes, Deion Sanders, as he often is, was on camera, right? You get a lot of video content that comes out of Coach Prime in Boulder. And it was last Thursday's Well Off Media YouTube channel. Coach Prime was talking to his team after practice, and he starts talking about safety. Carter Stoutmeyer was offered a bag to enter the transfer portal. And then he asked Stoutmeyer, who offered you that bag? And he says, Virginia. And then Sanders says, Virginia, you got to stop. I let you have one. I ain't saying nothing about it. Come on now. Come on. We let you have one. I ain't saying nothing about it. So he calls out Virginia. And I don't know if the tailback, Isaiah Augustive, was Augustive. I screwed up that name, Royal. I don't know if that was the one Deion was talking about when he said, we let you have one, because it was revealed a few days later that Isaiah Augustive, who was actually the leading rusher, now was very much a running back by committee at Colorado. He led the team on 394 rushing yards on 85 carries, 6'2", 210-pound running back. But in the transfer portal, he ends up with the Virginia Cavaliers. And by the way, Kenton, I don't bring all this stuff up, and you were, talking about what even is tampering. So I'm not bringing this up to slander Virginia or anything. Like quite the opposite. Like I bring up the fact that Virginia has been accused of tampering in football, mind you, just to bring up the fact that everybody's doing it, right? But it's how do you define tampering? Is it third parties reaching out to third parties? Like I highly doubt Tony Elliott personally called the cell phone of either of those Colorado players to directly tamper with them. So how do you define it? Probably everybody's doing it. Just maybe some schools are a little bit better and more sneaky about it than Tony Elliott's crew is.
And what rises to the level of like, hey, this is illegal, right?
Yeah.
Again, there are, for example, I'll give you a prime example, right? I played at Cass Tech. There were plenty of guys who, anybody who knows high school football at a high level knows about Cass Tech. It's a little bit of a football powerhouse in the Midwest there. And not a little bit of, but we're being humble here. Anywho. Yeah. If let's just say I was a freshman All-American at NC State, and then Jordan Lewis, who I played with at Cass Tech, who then plays at Michigan, gives me a call and says, hey Gibbs, man, I know that this is a school you always wanted to play at growing up. Come on, man. We need a D tackle. What you thinking? How about it? We got some money for you. Is that illegal? Even if the coach had nothing to do with it. The coaches said nothing about it. The coaches didn't have anything to do with it. He's just like, hey, we got to replace 2 first rounders. Now you see what we doing up here. You see we making first rounders up here. You come be the next one. Is it illegal if the coach doesn't know about it? If the coach doesn't know about it, is it still illegal? And it's just a lack of institutional control at that point. So it's so many dynamics and so many things at play here. And of course, let's be very real about this. We all know that there have been plenty of players enticed by offers that did not exist, by offers that had not been made, by shady agent. Oh, their agent who is working in their best interest hears, oh, hey, if you got a good defensive tackle, I can, make something happen for him. And again, the coach might not know where that defensive tackle is coming from. They just tell the agent, hey, tell me what you got. And the agent is now shopping that player around. So it's a ton of different ways that these things can happen. But again, we need to outline in specifics, hey, this is illegal. And if you are participating in this illegal activity, these are the punishments. Because I think the easiest place to root it out is via the agents. Because again, every agent's going to lie and say, oh, none of us are shopping players around before they hit the portal. We both know that's a lie. We both know
it's
that's
like,
a lie.
Yeah, again, like there's so many gray areas with tampering. Like the interpretation of the tampering rule that is by far the easiest to enforce. And once in a blue moon, a coach will have a lapse in judgment, or I think it may have happened to Deshaun Foster last year, his first year coaching at UCLA. Sometimes maybe you don't know the rules or have a lapse of judgment. If you're at the podium or you're on YouTube doing an interview or a media session and you talk about a player who plays for another program directly, or you talk about a recruit that has not signed with your program, then that's an open and shut case. Like you're on video, you're on record talking about a play. That's tampering. Like that's the easiest part to enforce. But when it comes to, alleged contact and intermediaries and he said, she said, it gets very difficult for the NCAA to actually enforce that. That's right now, Virginia, their over under is 5.5 wins for this coming season. Maybe if they keep tampering, they can up that to 6.5, 7.5 wins by the time we get closer to the season. I got to see if Cal's over under has changed, Kenton, because they, we talked about the running backs that Cal has lost, but they've lost multiple receivers. They lost 2 tight ends, 3 tight ends, actually, including Jack Endries, who was really good last year.
6 of their top 8 pass catchers gone.
Yeah.
6 of their top 8 from last year. And the number could be higher because the latest transfer to hop in might have also been an impact player. I have not looked to see the exact numbers, but
it was a receiver. Jonathan Brady was the latest one to hop in.
Yeah, so there's been, they're not just losing depth pieces that were like, oh, that kid was going to be a lovely software engineer at some startup in a few, Cal Berkeley a little different. Most of these athletes, if you go to a school that ain't got much academic merit, get ready to learn enterprise. You go to Cal, get ready to learn VC startup. That's what you got to get ready to learn out there. But in all seriousness, Cal is having an extremely tough time. And they could do all the tampering that has ever existed in the world, and I don't think they'd be able to replace all the production they lost last year. You're talking about starting quarterback, all conference preseason running back, your actual leader in rushing, 5 of your top 7 or 6 of your top 8 pass catchers from last year. I mean, wolf to say the least. That job is going to be an uphill battle coming into this year regardless. But now with all these losses and the hits that they took to that secondary in terms of graduation and guys just aging out, ugh.
Well, we'll talk about North Carolina's transfer portal a little bit later on when Isaac Shade joins us. Also, we've got the first round of the NFL draft coming up on Thursday night. It's going to be here before you know it. Unbelievable story as to how Cam Ward went from 0-star recruit to consensus first overall pick. And how many more first rounders is the ACC going to have on Thursday night? You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Oh, folks, we're only I caught Kenton mid-yawn. But you know what? The reason why Kenton is so relaxed right now and he's able to yawn during a commercial break is he knows his finances are secure. So he's never been this relaxed since he found Monarch Money. Because you ever check your bank account and you wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on things like food delivery. Now I budget smarter and I save more. And instead of juggling multiple accounts and apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, even plan your long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On NFL Draft. Guys, Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez do an awesome job as your favorite collegiate players get ready for the next level. Get the latest on draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, so, Kenton, I know that some folks like Shady McCoy a couple of weeks ago had a hot take where he thinks Cam Ward is going to be a bust because he's never seen a 0-star recruit become a franchise player at the NFL. I've never seen it. Now, there's some context there with Cam Ward. Maybe he just, maybe should have changed high schools if he wanted to be a higher ranked recruit because he was running a wing T offense at Columbia High School in Columbia, Texas, I think somewhere in the outskirts of San Antonio. And he only had one scholarship offer, and it was from FCS Incarnate Word. That was the only offer he got. He went and lit it up at UIW is what they call it there in Texas, Incarnate Word. Lit it up for 2 years, transferred to Washington State, lit it up for 2 years. He had the extra year because of the COVID year. So 5th year, goes to Miami, and he lights it up to the point where he's about to be the first overall pick. I know Shady McCoy may look at it and say, this is why I think the guy's going to be a bust. I think this is going to be one of the better stories we've had in the NFL draft, Kenton, for a guy to have the chip on his shoulder, to work as hard as Cam Ward did for the last 5+ years to put himself into this position. I hope NFL Network and ESPN have those really good, tear-jerking video packages ready to take us through the Cam Ward journey, because I am here for it. I'm so happy for this guy.
Shady McCoy is a prime example of all former players don't necessarily have great opinions. One thing that Nick Saban, who is known as the greatest college football coach of all time, always said to his players, he said it multiple times on air. He was on record saying this. He said it out loud. He said it in quiet. He said it in front of Miss Terry. He said it in front of the players' parents and moms and dads. I've had 1,000 coaches come in my building. 1,000. And I've never had a single one of them ask, what type of player was he as a freshman?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
why we're talking about high school for Cam Ward? We're talking about, people didn't think it was much from high school. I have seen it with my own two eyes. All of the projections, don't get me wrong. I give much respect to the Alan Trues and the Steve Whitfongs and the Tom Luganbills and all them of the world. That is a very legitimate job. It is more art than science, but they honestly get it right a lot more than they get it wrong. That's just a fact. Look at the national champions. Look at the last few national champions. Look at all the teams in the playoffs. Look at how many blue chip guys they have. Look at how many of those guys already acquired those stars before committing to place X, Y, and Z. And it's not really an effect of, Miami offers me. Now people think I'm a star. No. They thought you were a star, so Miami offered you is what happens much more often than not. But there are going to be exceptional moments where we see something different. Everything that's never happened before has never happened until it happens. There's never been a 0-star recruit to go for it. Yeah, there hasn't. Now there is. What about it? What are we going to do about this? Again, if you are rooting it in Cam Ward's style of play, if you say, hey, it's not sustainable the way that he plays football, I see your argument. I disagree, but I see your argument. If you say, hey, Cam Ward has not had to take a high volume of snaps from under center, and generally that doesn't bode well for NFL quarterbacks. That's a factual statement. At Washington State, mainly shotgun. At Incarnate Word, mainly shotgun. Even at Miami, where he did his most work under center, it still was a ton of shotgun. I get you. But we're talking about the player he was before he had hair on his chest. We're talking about the player he was when his voice was still cracking and he's going through puberty as this will be who you are going forward. I mean, what are we really doing here? I get it. Shady McCoy was All-American and all that in high school. He was a guy that, was a big-timer going in the pit, one of their best recruits in quite some time and whatnot. Everybody does not have that track, and that does not mean that they'll be bad.
Right. Yeah, no, I absolutely. And so the over-under, by the way, for first-round draft picks for the ACC, it's 3.5. I would like to see us go over that as a conference and get 4 or 5 guys drafted in the first round. I think it's going to go under, though, Kenton, because, and again, like, I'm not saying mock drafts are the gospel, right? These are, these are not the actual GMs doing mock drafts, but the ones who pretty consistently come up in the first round. Cam Ward at number 1 overall. Amari and Hampton usually comes up around 20 to Denver. Can be a little tricky with running backs, though. Sometimes they get devalued more than we expect. And, he's definitely getting taken after Ashton Genty. It's just how far after would be the question. And Donovan Ezeraku, edge rusher from Boston College, is the other guy who shows up in the mocks. I don't consistently see anyone else from the ACC. So I have a feeling we're going to go under 3.5, but a guy like Azare Thomas at Florida State is someone who may come close to that. Maybe Elijah Arroyo, the tight end from Miami, may come close, but probably second round. But I hope to be wrong, but I think we're going to go under 3.5.
I agree. I think that we are going to go under 3.5. However, I would not guarantee that and put money on it because a lot of these GMs, we see it every year. We see it happen every single year. I'm going to talk about a guy that was ACC adjacent for a moment. Kyle Hamilton was a guy that if you watched him, you knew, he's the real deal. He looks like he knows where the play is going before the offense knows 9 times out of 10. And he flew around in a way that you're just like, this is a big, long safety. He can tackle, he can cover, he can do it all. But then his 40 was too slow. And he was supposed to be, to me, a guy that looked like a definitive top 5 pick, but he drops out of that range because his 40 is too slow. When you look at Azare Thomas and Elijah Arroyo, they're on the exact opposite end of the spectrum. Nobody thought of those guys as first-round guys coming into this year, but all of a sudden you see, hey, this Thomas kid's about 6'2", ain't he? Oh, those hips look a little nicer than we thought they are. hey, this Arroyo kid, you know, he looks kind of fluid out there in shorts and a t-shirt. He's getting in and out of his breaks. And all of a sudden, all it takes is one GM. All it takes. That's all it takes, you know. Same way that the betting odds were for Tim Tebow to go in the first round, right? We all knew what we saw. We knew what we saw. But it took one GM to say, you know what? We're going to give him a shot. So for the ACC to go 4, we need one GM to fall in love with Elijah Arroyo or Azari Thomas. Just one. Or somebody get real crazy and do a Patriot-like move when Bill Belichick was there and say, you know what? I'm thinking I want a guy that's mocked in the 4th round here. I'm thinking I want a guy that's mocked in the 3rd, 4th round at pick number 29.
Well, Bill Belichick is now at the helm of the North Carolina Tar Heels. Maybe his fiance is maybe the one really calling the shots there. Maybe it's Mike Lombardi who's calling the shots there.
Wait, that's the fiance now? That's the fiance? I thought it was just his girlfriend. They're engaged?
Oh, I think hold on. Let me ask Isaac Shade. Sorry. They're just, it's not his fiance. Is it, Isaac?
No. Ain't no ring. No ring. Donno, let's not go conflating these relationships over here, my man. Come on.
Well, we're going to talk to Isaac about what's going on. I hope I didn't break Bill Belichick's engagement plans. I spoiled it for him if he was looking to do that. But we're going to talk about what's happening in the transfer portal in North Carolina with Isaac Shade from Locked On Tar Heels. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. And after making Locked On ACC your first listen, make sure you check out Locked On Tar Heels for your next listen, because there's plenty of stuff going on right now in Chapel Hill. All right, so let's talk.
Apparently, an engagement is going down over there too.
I broke some news.
We've scooped inside Carolina and Locked On Tar Heels. We'll scoop them all, baby.
I mean, but if he's going to hand her so much power, he might as well put a ring on it. She's running the program.
Dude,
at least.
Homegirl, perhaps the most frustrating thing to me. She's got a Carolina basketball jersey. My wife told me this. I hadn't even seen this. Yeah. It's a number 23. You know, her name is Jordan, but it's O-N. This is blasphemous. She got a 23 Carolina jersey. It says Jordan on the back with an O-N. I'm like, you're going to get strung up, sister. You can't be doing that.
Oh, man. Wow.
And when the Rev is telling you it's blasphemy, you know it's a serious deal. Isaac don't play about that. He ain't playing around.
I don't know if she's the one making transfer portal decisions there as well, but talk to me about losing Amari Campbell, one of the top defensive players of the Tar Heels, into the portal. Now, this couldn't have been a huge surprise though, Isaac, because he had dabbled in the portal in December, but I guess he decided to, kind of see things out with the new coaching staff. But now he's in the portal. How big of a loss is this going to be?
Donno, look, you talk about dabbling. All I can envision is him just sticking his big toe in a little pond and then stepping back out. Here's the thing. Here's why this is the biggest disappointment, I think, to me. North Carolina has kind of had this succession of linebackers. It's not, I'm looking at KG and I think about Peyton Wilson, who was just the dude for all those years in a row in Raleigh, right? For Carolina, they've kind of had this passing of the baton from Chaz Surratt to Jeremiah Gemmel to Power Eccles to Cedric Gray, or from Cedric to Power Eccles. And now is all right, Amari Campbell, your turn. You're the holdover, right, in the linebacking core. And part of it is Carolina, at least in the Mac Brown 2.0 era, didn't really go very deep at linebacker. They had some dudes, but just those two dudes. And Amari was the guy that I was like, okay, here's some dependability. Here's somebody you know and can trust. And so in that regard, I was like, yeah, that's where there's going to be some stability here, especially with Bo Atkinson just piecing out last week. The big edge that I thought was going to be so helpful for Brian Smith and I were literally just talking about this before I hopped on with you guys of Atkinson just felt like a Belichick kind of defender, Bill or Steve, whichever Belichick you want to go with. And so in that regard, it's yes, I think you can replace Amari Campbell, but the stability and who he was and what that kind of has stood for in that passing of the baton, I think for me is what makes it so hard.
You talk about Bo Atkinson leaving and kind of what he would have been as a chess piece for this defense. Which of these two moves do you think makes the biggest impact, Atkinson or Mark?
I think it's Atkinson for sure. Just the things he had started to show, his size and like I think of the two, and I'm not looking at an NFL draft board as we sit here, but I think Atkinson just is the better projected football player all around, right? Where Campbell can do it at a college football power conference level. Bo Atkinson is a dude that I don't think is as replaceable. And so that makes it more difficult for me, Ken.
Well, okay, let's talk about the good, because it's really not that surprising when you change coaching regimes and you have a new GM. There's going to be a lot of turnover, right? I think UNC, at least according to the 24/7 Sports database, they've lost, I guess, since December 44 players, but they have brought in 26 transfers. So in terms of the incomings, Isaac, what excites you most?
Not having the same defense. I mean, that's like what's been so frustrating to me about the Mac Brown 2.0 era is you basically squandered 5 great years of Sam Howell and Drake May because they had to win football games, and that put more pressure on them. And so it's like any questions like draft experts and scouts had about decision making for Sam Howell or Drake May, I think is purely a product of, yeah, because they're having to do it all and push and press because they know that the defense can't stop anybody. And so I think just at the big picture level, that's maybe my biggest area of excitement for the Tar Heels is just like start brand new and bring in a whole new core to go with Coach's Belichick. And let's just see if we can get something going.
Yeah, I'm always glad to remind people that 2 of Drake May's last completions ever were to Peyton Wilson and Jakeem Harris, safety at NC when he was at NC State.
When he was at NC State.
It was either him or Boykin, one of those two. It was one of those two. last completion ever. But speaking of the quarterback position, right? Obviously, you talk about a line of Carolina quarterbacks that were record breakers, top 10 picks, all that type of stuff. How do you feel about the quarterback room now, with Gio Lopez kind of assuming the mantle as the guy and seeing some of the shuffling, like, oh boy, heading back to Purdue and whatnot? What are you looking at as like, hey, I feel good, I feel great, I feel terrible. I'm indifferent about this quarterback room. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it on ACC Squad this week with Ryan Brown leaving Purdue to come to Carolina, going back to Purdue before he ever played a single down. I mean, you guys, he got the QB1 reps at Carolina's spring. They didn't play a spring game, but he got the QB1 reps over Bryce Baker. And at that point, Gio Lopez hadn't committed. Kenton, I'm definitely not feeling great if I'm taking your categories there. I want to feel good, but the problem is, if Gio Lopez is your QB1, he's not coming in until after spring ball with a whole new regime. Like, if you're doing that, but everything else is set and stable around it, and he's just got to come learn the system that's been in place for 5-6 years or whatever, maybe you feel a little bit better about that. But everything is so topsy-turvy and up in the air that nobody knows what to expect. We don't even have numbers or names on the jerseys at spring ball. I just, how could you feel much positivity towards it until you see what happens against TCU on Labor Day weekend coming up here in a couple months? And so I think it'll be Gio Lopez, but Carolina now is still being connected to other quarterbacks in the portal. And so it's like, are we done? Is he the guy? Is Bryce Baker going to be the guy? Are you going to bring in somebody else and Bryce Baker redshirt? Like, what's going to happen? I don't know. Guys, I don't know.
You heard it here first, folks. Bill Belichick is getting engaged. Hammer the under for UNC. You heard it here.
Breaking news.
We've got you covered at Locked On ACC, baby.
By the way, if I was a reporter who covered Tar Heels football, I would have been so mad at Belichick for not putting numbers or names on the spring football practice. Like to try to go out there and cover practice. Like at least Miami gives me numbers. Like they don't have names. At least I have a roster and I've got the numbers.
Legitimately, I wasn't there at Practice Like a Pro, which was the name of the spring day. But literally, the other beat reporters that were there were like, "Oh, I think that's Bo Atkinson's tattoo. So I think that's it." It's like they're just looking for like body markings or like, "Oh, look at that flowing hair. That's got to be." I mean, it's insane.
Them articles had to be brutal. There was a tall black receiver that had a lot of catches. We don't know which one it was, but he was tall, narrow, and dark skinned. So that guy, watch out for him in the fall.
But we saw Jordan Belichick out there directing traffic, and I'm just giving her the last name. Why not?
Let's you already. I mean, I already got her married. You're giving her the last name. Woo. Man, this went off the rails a little bit. Well, we appreciate Isaac Shade for spending some time with us. Make sure you check him out, not only at Locked On Tar Heels, but also Locked On College Basketball. He's another two-show man. Check Kenton out at Locked On Wolfpack and here on Locked On ACC. Check me out here on Locked On ACC and on Locked On Canes. And make sure you guys check out Locked On NFL Draft. Make that your next listen. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Locked On Tampering Podcast coming next, folks.